One of my greatest poetry fans suggested I read this poem, and it is sort of becoming a bit of a signature poem. It's not a typical poem for me, but it's an earlier piece, and I have to give a caveat. I do not have a true Southern accent, but this voice came to me with a Southern accent when I wrote it, and I did live in the South for a small time, so. Butcher's wife. I ached for his bookkeeper brother, but his voice narrow like the slit lids of those pigs with missing eyes. I never learnt to bear the odor, so I hid upstairs neath blankets till noon, lest his burnt gravy voice slice back of my neck. My half-sleep shudders as he slips me tongue kisses. Excrement, piss, and dry saliva rub my back with his marred fingers. Meat juice looms his pores. His clenched teeth grind like the bones of that bull who dent kick the abattoir's truck every time I fuck him. Thunk, thunk, my hands quick as an axe at the till. I slam the drawer, and his brother scratches my day's remains like a chicken. Yesterday I heard from the heifer's ribs a heartbeat, still. The crimson rodders ran off her like sap. Spinnaker shift. Twice this winter I deceived myself. The doves hard-worn by the desert salt pan had vanished, but I woke to hear them cooing on the roof like little gurgling drums. It was as if I'd sailed through the portrait of a storm, staggered sails slapped backward through ink-spun shipyards, and a tremulous flutter of feathers hung in the air. Later, darkness fell across the afternoon. The milk-gray sky swirled and wrinkled. That same winter, drops of snow rested themselves down into a sheet of pewter. There comes a death time when the world makes strange, and love winces before her water breaks. Moth, horse, accident, skin. A moth's dull wings wetted into a brass crease. Once, someone remembered me, crossing the ravine, my bare feet stung on the sharp cinder. Rain slid the mud bank over which orange blossoms sagged, and the trill echo of the last bird narrowed the sky. Someone saw me as I saw myself, a child scrawling my name in the dirt with a rusted nail, straining like the clang in the elm tree of a tiny bell. The wind was so faint I could barely wake into it. Last night I lay my chest over a stranger's back. My heartbeat pressed his shoulder blade. I stroked his hair as my hunger stalled under the canopy of summer heat, and the window filled with a silent tick of snow. The muzzle of a horse rose and lowered once, sharply. Following this, the original shape of the mare reared in flames. My pulse stung my throat. I lay trapped under the Cadillac's door as fire swept the stubble field. Smoke, like a crow's wing, flagged the vetch and settled over the date orchard. The sun, a blinding hallucination, I rubbed my belly's parchment of stretch marks. By noon, after weeding, I lay down in the yellow grass. The ache of labor shines up through my shoulders, not wanting the inside of my mouth to ripen, while two moths gather under a street lamp's green halo and drown in a blossom of dusk. This next poem is a divination, which I had a great joy in discovering these sort of archaic words and idea of divining the future from various means. And I did try some of these means, though not all of them. And this one, I read this one and the next few for my husband, Steve, who has been a great advocate of my poetry. Skyomancy. Divination by means of communication with the shades of the dead. The terebinth tree releases too late. Moire chemise spills through the boughs. A goodwill coat closets the red surge. Swiss dots, shade spurts in the silent palette of owl moss. I saw my love walking in the field. He lay down among the spinifex and spirea. Our postcoital vows trespass the private pines. Less hot, the rain drones among the spruce. I hear him, his tinseled leaves carpet, his uncarpeted house. Winter archive in the double mirror. When I rotate my hand in the double mirror, the back of my palm blushes under a revisionist's kiss. My lips, wings thresh, the incantation of fire. After we make love, I know I am not rational. Birds dart in the glass trees. Pinstripes up your body's plane draw you into a flicker. I study us in the mirror, as once at sea level, I studied the wind map, the repeatable stretch of red glyphs where waves of grackles flight smeared dusk. The faint silvering of my hair, no less the snow as a white blossom, a stone shore, or a drift of starlight. Press your ear against mine, the shade brightness, birdsong, moves through us, limitless. We breathe into the black foil, as beyond us, music washes the grass. A sway of hills reflect the smallness of our image. Acta Sanctorum, which is a sacred act. Presently the empire recedes. We are corrected or we are alone. Presently, I am at the dog pack at the end of the table. No, we may no longer go to the caves, no matter how they please us. I saw myself shine. I saw an airiness beyond me. I saw that you were walking inside the map, unburdened. That time when the narrow depth of the water bore us. My message was the need for truth. I filled a bucket with coins and offered my gatherings to the soldiers, inconsolable that every pinch of flower-shaped flame might loosen from me. Where might I keep the small armatures? Amazonite. I await nectar's splintering flora, carrion blossoms spread through trees. A savior was made of the crimson fox, through the sun communicated with the other sun, and from a hedgerow of skulking osier cuttings, I watched the wind polish the larval surface of a long brass table. Sex was implacable. He would not kill me, but I gave myself for him to kill. He speaks with the usual inference, fenestrate yellow layers, a lulling red measure, where a road begins with no limit, until the night drops a curtain around us, until the undying are anointed with the scent of cloves, until we are a calloused arrangement, lines of light. His voice traveled from a vast place, bearing snow's true dimension. He was a burning, mineral plains, springs modeled grasses, indolent spaces of the dead. I say that was a collaborative poem because I had a good friend here that lived in your town, in Claremont, and taught here at Pomona. You might have had her read here. We read here together, Hillary Gravendyke, and we sort of exchanged ideas, and so we gave each other the topic of gemstones. And this was written for Hillary after she passed away last May. She was a very good friend and a great thing in my life, a great person to aspire to, and I was lucky for her friendship. So this poem is basically based on one of her lines, one of the lines of her poems. I was promised only good things. Errors furred by illness and an animal spell. It is plain, a sham on wishes. Her messages shut every door. Hers was a kind of truth grievers abide. And the left ones, with our day's imprint, cannot yet separate her only good things, which inevitably formed a first impression twice. Oh, but she knew her voice, knew clarity, knew the street home, knew wishes locked in a wordless room. Before we were friends, before she went into fearlessness, her traveled voice was without distance. Yes, promises, of course, After all, this unbridled terrain, harms named without emphasis on the shivering earth, as the country we once loved, sweated and engraved more walls. We now sense appetite's brittle predilection, snow fever, mirrors feverancy, fatal structures as trees, similar the grass. Further from dream, but with greater accuracy, listless in this reverberation dictations allow. The body's punishment expires without impunity. A contrail's chafe smooths the sun. Sky erases the steady spasm. Perhaps she tells, and comes there with her eye to the darkness to separate the cold from fragment. This is a title poem of my next book, but it's in this latest collection, Mirror Inside Coffin. There is an old love inside of me that will not be lit by sound. She is a lace imprint of breath over a patch of verbena. My eye, I have seen your reflection, the thrash of night jars in the burdock, a mirror inside a coffin, the mouth of a woman when she is kissed. Psalm and power lines suture the town in an electric web. In the earth's embrace of rock and slope, there is scarcely a tree, no probability of a sail. The dirt underneath the victim's nail will not catalog the last hill she walked. What love do I, after my death, leave? What is held there by the threads of my small name? I have in the back of my skull, blaze. Do I have the same for you? Yes, always it is the same, a wish of the senses. The soul passes through the silk edges of the portrait. Certainly the weeds billow through her hair, just as stars gather in the dusk limbs of the willow. She will not be preoccupied. Neither of us will answer goodbye. And this last poem is a kind of dangling, is a newer poem. It doesn't exist really, I mean, it exists somewhere, it exists here, it exists online, it's been published, but hasn't found another format beyond that. Matines for Juliet. Temporal, the deer, your animal self curled down, moss sheltered and tenuous. And it was an easy knowledge. Yellow blossoms, motionless smoke, gathered in the reeds. Snow's reversal, brevity, a shapely whiteness of shudder and wench. This is as it is, an intimate mercy. And we'd like to close with a final collaborative as a final kind of no longer an introduction, as a goodbye. So Lissa is going to join me on another collaborative poem we wrote together, Aphrodite's Thirst. You spread salt over the map so the body might continue as a trajectory. Lantern and water succumb to snow.
I stood in the civility of language, fog scaffolding the lattice work, pigeons linden-lined paths.
Over the past 5 centuries, no one remembered the threat the hand made of progress, the wooden steps leading upward to mist.
I stood at your door, the way fog scaffolds the lattice work. The staunch stump stands in solid light. My shadow, a splintered windmill, a chapel in the round.
Civility, the language we speak when we speak with the maturity of the dead. At ease in cloud, where the overlooked beauty of pigeons ripple the linden-lined dirt paths. The wooden steps, my shadow splinters, spreading salt over the last 5 threats. So thank you all so much. It's been a joy.